Greetings from Faraday Foundation and Faraday Studios. This is episode 5 of our Science Wizards Retrospectives video series. Up to this point, Jake has shared his knowledge and recollections about Wizards 1 through 3. Jake is in the spotlight now as Wizard 4. Hey Jake, in 1995, you were dubbed Wizard 4 at the Royal Institution of Great Britain. That's over 25 years of science wizardry. Please share with our viewers some of the highlights during this time, especially those that involve younger audiences.
Wow, really? 25 already? I just can't believe it's 25 years. That's a quarter of a century. That's a third of my lifetime or something like that. That's amazing. Well, what are some of the highlights of my career since then? Of course, that was the official time that Mr. Wizard 3 said, okay, you're Wizard 4. You know, so it was all downhill from there at that day. I mean, my head was so big. I was just, I got elected fellow of the Royal Institution. And and back in those days, you had to wear a black tie to go to the lectures at the Royal Institution. It was a big, you know, you'd dress black tie and they'd have high tea and stuff. And it was very prim and proper, the event was. And the evening that I was made a fellow, there was only one other person who was renewing their membership position at the Royal Institution, was the Duke of Kent, the Queen's cousin. So there was His Grace, the Duke of Kent, and Jake being voted on to be fellows, and I thought, hey man, what's wrong with this picture? And it was just dumb luck that occurred. So I suppose that period of time was the highlight of my professional career, was being made a fellow of the Royal Institution. And the truth of the matter was, now the story behind the story, they were so happy to have Mr. Wizard there. You know, the television guy, been on TV for 50 years. I was more his sidekick. I was like Gabby Hayes or somebody, an old sidekick to Mr. Wizard. So he kind of snuck me in as a fellow. But as smart as those folks are at the RI, they said, hey, fellows donate a lot of money, so let's bring him in, come on. I'm sure that was a backroom discussion, you know. But I've been an active member of the Royal Institution since that night. Then right after that elevated my presence, I guess, in the eyes of some. So I was made chief scientist at Discovery Channel. And of course, I think that was because most of the uppers at Discovery, who are now gone, so I can say all these terrible things behind their back now, were heavily involved in politics. And you know, Discovery Channel is just outside of D.C., outside the Beltway and Silver Spring and Bethesda, Maryland at the time. And they were very politically involved. And so to have somebody on their staff that had a title or a thing, you know, that was a big deal. So, and that was about the time when this internet thing, you know, is like, oh, and Discovery invested a fortune, I think, a small fortune, in building a web presence. People said, a what? We're going to have web pages. A web page. What is a web? What's a web? You know, this is what we're going. And so we started a web presence for Discovery, and I had to pay. I had a significant presence in that, and the highlight of that whole web presence was, you ready for this? Jake's Stink Bomb Vault. And kids had to work hard to get into that. You know, you just didn't get, you know, asked to come to the Stink Bomb Vault. That's where we kept our best science activities hidden in the vault. So if you would do all these other activities, you could gain entrance to the Stink Bomb Vault and learn all the secrets of the wizard, right? So we went live. First day we went live, in the first few hours, I received 6,800 of these things called emails. And I thought, oh my God, 6,800. I just, you know, woke up in the morning, I went and it said, you have 6,800 emails. I go, what? Well, I tried to answer them. I mean, it was just futile. So we made up paragraph standard answers. Thank you, blank, for, and then fill in their name and send them back. And I thought this is terrible. What? Well, I don't think it was more than 3 or 4 months when the COPA laws, child protection laws on the internet, were started to be enforced, and thank goodness they were, because you couldn't just talk to kids freely on the internet. You had to have their parents' permission and all that sort of thing. So I was so glad that they started enforcing those laws so that I didn't have to answer all those emails. Oh my God. So we could blame it on the lawmakers. Save me. And that was a highlight to see how the internet entered the wizard world, or vice versa. That was a major shift. We thought, man, we've got to change the way we dance to address things on the internet. It's a whole different ballgame. And so I got to live in that transition time. Mr. Wizard suffered through that when going from old-time television, where you'd have a 30-minute program that there would be a theme for the program, and it was almost a monologue about a topic. And then when Nickelodeon took it over, it had to be this no longer than 3 to 5 minutes on any one thing, this magazine format. It was a big shift in programming. And we went from that, from a plot to a magazine, now to this rapid fire, machine gun fire of information on the internet. And so that's what I inherited, and that was another, I don't know if that was a highlight, maybe it was a low light, but that was a significant thing, was to change the way we told the science story so that it would fit within the confines of the internet. And we're still struggling with that. I mean, that's a daily struggle that we deal with here at Faraday Studio and Midnight Science Club and such, is how do you take this beautiful opera of science thinking, this precision and accuracy and careful measurements and thoughtfulness, and translate that to this rapid fire blast on the internet.
Yeah, Jake, I liken it to the difference between fast food and a really great restaurant. You're going to probably get better nutrition at your favorite restaurant, but the fast food,
so
place to eat is so convenient, so quick.
And you can train yourself to actually enjoy that fast food. It's really, I made fun of it the other day. I don't drink wine, but I'd listen to people in the restaurant say, they taste them. This is a 10-year-old Pinot Noir or whatever it is, and it's a little too sweet for me, or got too much. They're talking about tasting the wines. And I thought about myself being at a fast food drive-thru going, oh, that's some fresh styrofoam. There's nothing better than a fresh styrofoam wrapper. Smell that, boy. That
soft drink is only a couple of days old.
It's only a couple of days old. And I like it when the soft drink sticks to your teeth for a while. You got to work it off. Yeah, it's just. So yeah, I make fun of it. But that's the battle we're fighting. It's a pleasant battle though, and we are having successes at it. So, and what else? I was chief scientist at Discovery Channel, and then I got to work at National Geographic, which really was an awesome thing. And then also we got to work at just about every scientific organization in the nation's capital. We spent, 13 years at the Smithsonian, the Natural History Museum, and I guess that's when I ran into Bob Starr. At NASA, I got to meet this guy from NASA named Bob Starr, and I thought that was a nickname, like, who's he? Well, that's Bob Starr. Okay. I thought it was a Starr. That's a guy that worked at NASA with the last name Starr. Where does that happen? That was kind of neat. I met you there. So those were some of the highlights, I had a show when Mr. Wizard finally retired. He said, I can't do it anymore. I did this thing on Fox Television called Jake's Attic. And this was pre-internet stuff, and we were going to do a half-hour series. Well, it turned out I did it with a company called Sachs Family Entertainment. Was going to take us national, and I was going to appear right before Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, I was going to put that on my tombstone. I was on with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's great. And it turned out that we were getting more airtime doing interstitials than we did a half-hour show. That it was kind of neat the way it worked. Fox would air these little 1-minute things, and they were pretty terrible. We didn't have much of a budget. They called me One Take Jake. They said, well, we've only got the studio for an hour. We've got to get this many done. Do it in one take. Whatever you do, that's it. Come on, let's go. Bam. And so I had to find the right kids to help do that. I had to find some bright kids to help me do that. We did these Jake's Attic minutes, and within no time, we were on like 158 stations, and they would air them every morning at 7 o'clock and 4 in the afternoon, every day. And we got more, a larger reach doing that than we did doing a half-hour show. And that's, I could have done that the rest of my life, but it was just killer because they would want us to travel to different cable company towns, and do live shows. And that's when I did just an unfathomable number of visits to schools and live shows. I was on the road. I kind of got tired after that at the end of the second week. Talking about fast food, and I got a lot of frequent flyer miles in though. But I would go on like I did a tour. I did a 17-city tour, just hurrying from one town to the next, and the neatest part of it was when I got there, the kids were so welcoming. I'd go to schools, like they'd have, one of the things we did was called pickle days, that I would show up and do my signature demonstration, the electric pickle. So we made a big deal about it. If everybody's good and everything works well, at the end of we'll do the electric pickle. And people get, oh, we're going to get to see it? We're going to get to see it? The electric pickle, really? We're going to get to see it? Oh, yeah, if everything goes well. And kids, they would have pickle songs, pickle events, pickle dinners, all this stuff. And it was built around the old science demonstration, the electric pickle. And I think we made it on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and David Letterman. All the night shows we did the electric pickle on those. I guess that's a highlight. I don't know. But one thing I learned from it was the kids, they liked me. I was kind of like Santa Claus or the Tooth Wizard or whatever. I don't know what I was. But they never paid any attention to me. And that was what made me so happy, is they focused on the science.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'd say you probably energized some adults in the crowd too, and took them back to their early years.
Oh yeah. I was, yeah. It was the last of the analog existence. Mm. During my helm, it was the grand shift from analog to digital, and early science experiences are all analog. They're just all straightforward, hands-on, step-by-step building, and
well, that kind of ties into my next question, Jake. Let's go before the 25 years as a wizard. You were a classroom teacher for many years before that. Any specific science demonstrations, as you mentioned, analog science demonstrations that you brought from that experience into your Wizard 4 role?
I collected, here's what happened. I was a teacher, and I did fairly well. I was named Young Educator of the Year for some reason. I think it was my good looks. I was on the front page of the paper. It was something that just... Handsome man, science teacher is wonderful. Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Jake, the science teacher. It's what it was. And somebody in the school system said, Jake is so good with these. They gave me the roughest assignments sometimes, like, oh, goodness sakes. And when you got kids who are good students and had, family and social graces, so they were good students, it was easy to teach. It was just like putting butter on bread, just easy. But then you would get kids, bless their hearts, that had challenges of all sorts. And I found myself, I won't say getting stuck with them, because I fell in love with them all. But it was like, this is like changing a dirty diaper. I love you, but man, does this ever end? So over the years, I got the reputation of being able to handle challenged kids and kids with issues. And it didn't bother me all that much. I kind of enjoyed it. It was a challenge. And so I took it on. And one of the things I did, I learned, I was in my 20s or whatever, however old I was, I just had to capture their mind. I just had to capture their mind and pull them towards whatever it was we were doing that day. And I was inspired. I went to hear Hubert Allier speak in my early 20s. At a science teacher's function they took me to, and I got to spend time with him. I listened to his session twice, and in between I hung around and helped him do stuff, and picked up what he said about capturing a person's mind, just capturing their attention, so to speak. So I went back and started stealing ideas, just like Milton Berle would steal jokes. I'm going to borrow any idea I can find. And I started, and then I got such a mess of those things, those activities, files, that I started doing workshops at science teacher conventions on this subject. And it became very, very popular in the science teaching world. And I called the things whelmers, activities that don't overwhelm you, but they do whelm you. I've never heard that word. And I'll give you an example of a whelmer. So here's a piece of paper. And just imagine you've got a bunch of high school kids that are going, what is it? What do you want? Oh man, come on, get it over with. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, okay. So now I've got a piece of paper. And I give everybody a piece of paper, and they go, yeah, big deal. I said, so besides your fingers, what's touching the paper? Nothing. Nothing's touching the paper. Something's touching the paper. Nothing's touching the paper. Then somebody will feel, well, air. Okay. Well, air don't do nothing. Just touching it. I say, okay. Air's touching this paper. So, if I take this piece of paper and blow on it, what happened? And they say, well, the air, you put more air on one side and it blew it over, right? Oh, that makes sense. So if I have the piece of paper here in front of me and I blow on the back side of it, it comes up. Now, why is that? Because you got more air on it under there, fool. I mean, what's your problem? Can't you figure that out? You put more air on one side. Okay, so what's going to happen if I blow over the top of it? See, if on this side I blow, it goes up. What's going to happen if I blow on this side?
It'll go down.
It goes up too. I blow underneath, it goes up. Blow across the top. See that look on your face? You weren't overwhelmed, but you were overwhelmed a little bit, right? Now, if you can explain to me what just happened, I'll buy you a Coke. Let's go.
I think it has something to do with reduced pressure on the top due to the...
Oh, come on, you're from NASA. Give me a break.
Yeah.
But that concept of just, simple aerodynamics with a piece of paper, I just started collecting those and got hundreds, not thousands of them. And we even put them together in books. And then I started doing workshops. And the neatest thing was, all these organizations would have me come, museums, and would have me do these Welmer's workshops. And the Department of Education, McRail Mid-Continent Regional Education Laboratory in Aurora, in Denver, outside Denver, was one of the 7 regional. I went there and made videos of them, and they distributed them, and we got an acknowledgement from the AAAS that every teacher in the U.S. should have access to Welmer's. It was a neat tool to have. A teacher should have this ensemble of activities at their command, just to pull them out and do these activities, because they're actually like a guy that can make fishing lures. Some guy that sits around the house and makes lures, to catch trout with. He said, just imagine having this set of lures in your drawer there. You can pull it out and flip it out there and catch a kid's head and pull it into that topic. So the greatest compliment that I was paid was Mr. Wizard got sick and was invited to be a judge at the 9X competition in Washington, D.C. It was the largest, most grand student science competition. And I know the winners got, this was back when $40,000 was a lot of money. A $40,000 scholarship plus a $250,000 grant to take with them to college, for their school to do research with. And I suppose that would be 5 or 6 times that now, the inflation thing. And so they had all these Nobel Prize winners were the judges, and they wanted Mr. Wizard to be a judge. And he didn't feel too good at the time. He said, Jake, would you like to go to D.C. for a couple of days and do this? I said, no. I'd been traveling so much, no. He said, well, you get $2,000 a day. I'm in. So I went there, and it was at the Hotel Washington and the National Press Club, and here were these kids doing these science demonstrations. And one of the judges, and I'll tell this story later, but one of the judges was Leon Lederman from the Fermi Accelerator. He and Shelley Glashow had discovered the subatomic particles of all sorts. And one evening at dinner, I did a bunch of Welmers for these scientists, and they just loved them. So Leon comes up and said, Jake, I retired, and I helped start the Chicago Teachers Academy of Math and Science. And we've got a mess in our school system in Chicago, south side of Chicago. Schools are a mess. I'm going to straighten them out. He said, would you help me? I said, me help you? You got a Nobel Prize for crying out loud. What? You want me to carry your lunch for you or something? What? He said, I can't do what you do. Oh, really? That's right, Jack. You can't do what I can do. So he invited me to come do a Welmer's workshop in Chicago. And I went to a high school, and they had 85 teachers show up after school. And I was standing there waiting for them to come in, and here they came down the hallway, and from other schools too, and they were science teachers, and they all looked like they'd just come off the front line of a battleground. Like, bring in the medics. Medic, got a science teacher here. And they took one look at me and said, oh, God, here he is. Some guy's going to tell us something. Oh, good Lord. And here I was going, oh, geez. These guys are out there fighting tooth and nail. And they said, how long is this going to take? Well, it's scheduled for 4 hours. Oh, God. And you get dinner. Well, when do we eat? We have to do this, don't we? Yeah. So this old fat white guy from, where are you from? Kansas. Oh, God. No. So I started showing them how to do the Welmers. By the time the evening was over, they were screaming, laughing, carrying on, so excited. And they said, when are you coming back here? And I said, never. Leon called me up the next day. He said, could you come back in like 3 or 4 weeks? said, really? I came back, and just by word of mouth, there were 400 teachers there. And they moved it to the Chicago Museum. They had a big enough auditorium. And I came back a month and a half or so later, it was 880 teachers. And they were just sitting there. And I thought, well, they're there to look at me because I'm so good looking. And they were so happy to get these little tools, these little Swiss Army knives, these Welmer things. So that was probably it validated what I was trying to do. The flaw in my plan was that I'm not a businessman, you know, and it's not easy getting stuff into the educational marketplace. You know, it's difficult. Competition is fierce, and you have to be a marketer, which I'm not. So that's one of the things we're working on now, is to take this big collection that I've collected, and Mr. Wizard collected. All the wizards before me have hundreds, thousands of activities, you know, and how we're going to get those out. And while we're filtering them through this modern technology, trying to get the whelm through the internet is going to be a challenge, but we'll do it. I got a few years left to get it done. But you were whelmed with a piece of paper.
I was whelmed. I have whelm goosebumps.
And you know, another whelm you can do with a piece of paper. This piece of paper, if you look at the edge, look down the edge of it, is 500,000 atoms thick, 500,000 atoms thick. If I fold it over, double sheet, just that typical paper, that's 1 million atoms thick right there. And you just have to think about that. 'Cause, you know, one of the things, that button on your shirt, that white button on your shirt, those are centimeter buttons. That standard buttonhole, that button, just a standard shirt button, is a centimeter across. Right? You say, okay, I got you. Take 100 buttons, you got a meter. I got it. Take a million atoms, you got the edge of a double sheet of paper. Gives you sign. So that's a little Whelmette. Doesn't make it up to Welmer. You know, that will stick with you the rest of your day, won't it? Rest of your days. That piece of paper is about 500,000.
Every time you see a piece of paper, you think, oh my goodness, that's not just a thin piece of paper, that's a container for millions of atoms. You know?
It's atoms, yeah. It's just they're stacked there like, yeah.
Well, Jake, let's look at something else. You've covered some of this, but maybe this question will evoke some additional memories. You have no doubt worked with many people and organizations over the years. Please share with us some that were particularly meaningful for you. You've mentioned the Discovery Channel, and you've mentioned you know, other organizations. So let's just continue that. Who have you bumped up against that you thought you would never be associated with?
Listen, I've got the bottom drawer in my desk is filled to the brim with business cards. Thousands of business cards of people that working with Mr. Wizard especially, but Discovery Channel that I've met, and I've got a stack of cards this thick of astronauts, you know, and the House Science and Technology Committee, and just about everybody at the Smithsonian, and I don't know how many university scientists, and it just goes on. The chief scientist at the CIA. You know, I got to go to just about every scientific place and entity in the U.S. Capitol, and I think I visited every state except 2, Alaska and Maine, doing this stuff. So it's like, I met so many people. The Smithsonian was really cool to get into the back. You know, I had the passwords, the keys to get into the back rooms at the Smithsonian. It was so cool just to to hold on to Blackbeard the Piot's peg leg, you know. You see, there it is, you hold it. Or there's the bullet at Walter Reed. They were doing this thing, and there was the bullet, it was out of Abraham Lincoln's head. And I go, really? There it is. It was just on and on. I just, so lucky, I wouldn't even know where to. I got to be at the National Medal of Technology Awards. They do the National Science Medal and the National Technology Awards too. I was the MC of that at the National Academy of Science and Department of Commerce, who does stuff. And I met, it's endless, the number of scientists that I got to meet. You know, I got to spend a couple of years with Tony Fauci at NIH. You know, I got to go to the NIH, and we worked there on 2 seasons of the Discovery Young Scientist Challenge.
That's actually part of the next question, since you mentioned a competition. So let me get into that, because you're right in there already. You're anticipating these questions. I know that one of your most important goals is to inspire students to think like scientists. What are some challenges and competitions that you have either started or participated in over the years to help realize this goal?
Well, you know, I started out in science fairs. I think I entered my first science. My first was either in '61 or '62, something like that. Yeah. So, science fairs, I was heavily involved in, both participating in and then judging in and setting up and arranging. That started, you know, back in the '50s and '60s. You know, 70 years ago, or whatever, however many years ago, a long time ago, decades ago. And then in '85, I think it was, '84, these 2 characters that I met, Poots and Jack Carnes, 2 science guys from New England, started Science Olympiad. And I went to the first meetings of that. And now that's a big organization. The Science Olympiad is another. And I've been involved with that. I think they gave me my 25-year pin the other day as a volunteer. I don't know, but Science Olympiad was the big one. The one I enjoyed the most, other than the 9X competition, and I've been to ISEF, the International Science and Engineering Fair. My little area of expertise with ISEF was they're trying to do outreach to minorities and underserved. I became kind of the patron saint for the disenfranchised, because it seemed like the same kids were always winning the fair every year. And it was always the sons of engineers or doctors. You know, it was just very, I don't know what the word is, but it was a very inbred group of winners. And it was almost to the point where you didn't need to have the competition anymore, because it was like the Olympics for the Olympics or something. It just got so bad, so top. How do we expand that? How do you get a kid that lives in an underserved area to even enter? They say I stand no chance of getting involved. So that was that challenge that I worked on, and we'd go to schools and do the inspirational assemblies and that sort of thing, and we help kids do projects. And then we trained teachers on how to do science fair projects, and I did a lot of that, how to get involved in the science fair system. And out of that work, a lot of school districts started making science fair part of their curriculum. And Science Olympiad is now part of the curriculum in some schools, which is great. I mean, so I contributed to that a little bit, I think. And then the Discovery Young Scientist Challenge was the most fun, because we not only were looking for young scientists, we were looking for young science communicators. And then say now they're getting into my backyard. And that was great, because we really met some students that they weren't always the best science scholars, but they sure could spin a story. And I said that was the purpose of that competition. And I'm still in touch with some of those kids. I mean, they're 40 years old now. And the things they're doing, you know, Nolan's Kamataki is one of the winners of the competition. He's at Harvard and MIT doing research. And what's amazing was his research project when he was in high school was on this statistics of mass infections or disease outbreaks. It was almost like he wrote the scenario of COVID when he was in high school, and the patterns of spread and stuff. And it's like, so there he is, studying statistics and genetics. I said, wow, what are you going to do? So being that Discovery Young Scientist Challenge competition was great. It was really great.
Can you highlight or list briefly some of the current activities you're working on that, you know, as this video goes out and it get some age on it, we'll see some of these activities, you know, on the internet and maybe realized in larger numbers?
Well, more recently, you know, working for Mr. Wizard, his most popular reach to the community was a series he called Supermarket Science. And still in print, and it was, you know, doing science with stuff you get at the grocery store. There's no big deal, but it had a big reach, and a lot of kids appreciated it, and I think it probably paid for a third of his retirement. I mean, it was a pretty big deal. And so before he passed away, we had the idea of hardware store science. And I had a big account at my local hardware store. I'd go in there all the time and buy stuff for all the competition. So, you know, I was a favorite customer at the hardware store. So we got the idea of doing that. And so over the years, we started Hardware Store Science. And we got a series of books. And I guess the blue book is now coming out. It's at print. So we got the red, orange, yellow, green. 4 books are done, and the 5th one, the blue book, is at the printers. We'll end up having 7 of those for Roy G. Viv, you know, the rainbow spectrum. And those are activities you can do at the hardware store. And that program's just plugging right along. You get online, see Hardware Store Science, and there it is. And of course, Midnight Science Club, that arose from that notion that every kid that watched Mr. Wizard wanted to be the kid on the show. They always dreamed, oh, wouldn't it be neat to be that kid? Get to blow up that cat or whatever they were doing. Wouldn't that be fun to do that? And I refer to blowing up cats just because it gets people irked at me. I would never blow up a cat. But it's just kind of fun to see if people are sleeping. You know, see if they're sleeping during my presentation. Let's go blow up a cat. People wake up. What did he say? So we thought, wouldn't it be nice using the internet where people, kids of all ages around the world, could hang out with the wizards? Just hang out with them. And what's inspired that was I got to meet Linus Pauling, the guy with 2 Nobel Prizes, peace in chemistry. And I was in the chemistry club at the university, and I got to be his driver because I had a convertible, and he loved that convertible. And so I got to drive him around to the dinner and to the picnic and stuff. And you know, I asked him, what happened to you, Dr. Pauling, that got you interested in science when you were a kid? Do you remember it? Where did it go off in your head? I love this. I love this. He said, oh, no, I know exactly when it was. My uncle informed me that if you took a book of matches, and book matches were a new thing when he was a kid, you know, it's like these book matches. Everybody, well, book of matches. If you take one of those books of matches, lay it on an anvil, something hard, and smack it just right with a hammer, it will explode. But you got to hit it just right in the center, on the heads, in the closed. You have to have the book has to be shut. If you hit it just right, wham! So what do you think everybody at that meeting did? The American Chemical Society student meeting did when they got home. You got any matches around here? I'm going out to the garage. I got to get the hammer. I mean, even the chemists, I got to try that. I did, as soon as I got home. Bam! And I thought, of all my treasured moments, I will remember that till the day I die. You know, just spending time with Linus Pauling and blowing up a book of matches. And I said, that is such a precious thing. And all my memories of Mr. Wizard, you know, being in the shop and making stuff, just those type of memories formed my science character. So I thought, why not have something online where people could come and hang out with no specific agenda other than do those neat things that capture your mind in. That's Midnight Science Club. That's what we're trying to do with it. That's the guts of it anyway. It's a little irresponsible. We do meet at midnight because it's always midnight somewhere on the planet. If you define the fact that high noon is when the sun is overhead, that's what noon is when sun is overhead, right over your head, right at the top. That's noon. So there has to be a bottom somewhere on the planet. It moves 1,000 miles an hour. Midnight moves 1,000 miles an hour. But something to bring that up. Midnight Science Club. So finally, the biggest thing I'm working on now, I think is going to be my swan song. Yeah, it probably won't be a swan song, more like a goose song. I don't know, I don't know the swan. I'm more in the goose area. Is the Faraday 200. I think this is going to be it. There are so many kids now on the planet that are underserved in science education. Some of it's to do to poverty and social problems and inequality and all that sort of thing, yes. Some of it is due to the fact that the smart folks that are in charge of science education have gotten so loaded down with politics and policy, and they've stepped aside from serving students. It's more of the policy and the positioning and the power and all that stuff let the fast food science become the mainstay. And so there are a lot of rich, well-off, and good school district kids that are getting undernourished as well, besides the poor kids who are living in an orphanage in a camp across the oceans that aren't getting any STEM at all, any science training at all. So I said, what can we do? What can we do? How do we help all those kids? And we're talking about millions of kids all around the world. Is there anything we can do? And there is. So we're looking through the wizard files and say, we're going to pick the top, we're going to pick 200 activities that we would like every kid on the planet to do sometime in their life. End of story. That's it. Starting about the 4th grade, do one of these activities a week until the 8th grade, and you will be thinking like a scientist. And you will use every skill that a scientist uses to do these really engaging activities. And just do one a week. And it's ideas that I've stolen or borrowed from Faraday and Allier and Don Herbert and the places I've borrowed them from over the years, from lots of scientists and astronauts. And I've asked everyone that I meet, what did you do as a kid that really got you hooked on thinking like a scientist? And I'm incorporating those into the mix so that you can do these activities at school or not at school. Homeschool, no teacher, do them by yourself, do them with the Boy Scouts, do them any organization, or just with your parents, do them on your own. It's just things I want you to do. And it would be akin to something like, Mr. Pavarotti, do you have any hints for me how to be a good singer? You got to give me a hint, some little hint, or something I could do to improve my performance as a singer. And Pavarotti would say, 48 hours before you sing to the public, stop consuming dairy products. Why is that? Well, because you get a coating on your vocal cords and it's hard to get it off. And so singers know that. You don't eat ice cream before you sing. Oh, that's one thing. That'll make me a little bit better? Yeah, just the one thing. That's all. One thing. I say, can you remember that? Yep. Let's stick with you the rest of your life. Yep, I got it. Well, I've got 200 things. Really? What will happen if I do all 200 of these things? You'll be a darn good singer without even taking music lessons. Really? Yep. Because music lessons can be broken down into individual little steps that you do. And you grow on those things. And so that's the Faraday 200 that we want to, and we just, in the last few months, we got picked, we sold that notion to the United Nations SDG project 2030, and we're an impact partner. The Faraday 200 is going to be an impact partner for goal number 4 in the 17 worldwide development goals, which is quite an honor, because goal number 1 is to end world hunger. And I'm going, hey, that's a pretty big deal. So we're working on goal 4, quality education. So we're a part of that. And I said, wow, really? And we're doing it 4th to 8th grade because everybody on the planet, every pedagogue, person who teaches, knows that the 4th grade in that general area is the trending point for a young person. And 8th grade is another one. And about the middle of your 11th grade year, junior in high school, is when people, I am going to college. I am going. I'm putting, or I'm not. It's when the trending points, we call them. And so we build the science standards to those. 4th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade. So my goal is to say, starting in about the 4th grade, we want you to engage you with these activities. And go ahead and take science classes if you want to, but if you don't, that's fine. Just do these activities. And it would be better if you had a good science teacher, of course. But if you don't, do these anyway. And I think the outcome will be great. Because that's what happened to me, I mean, I watched Mr. Wizard on TV and I did these little activities, And then I made great discoveries on my own. Well, here's one of my great discoveries. Long burning matches. Oh my gosh. These are heaven. They make them out of special wood and they put a little, look at it, it's a lot longer match. It burns for what? Burns for 1 minute. So that's a good match. And see that? What's it? Wow. Everybody else's match goes out, in about 20, 15 or 20 seconds. This puppy will burn a minute. I can get some stuff done with this. I'm telling you. One of my glorious discoveries, long burning matches. Another one that got me hooked was the first time I owned a piece of lab glassware. I went, oh my gosh, look at this thing. Once you get involved with Mr. Wizard type activities and you do a few of them, and you do keep grasshoppers in jars or whatever it is you do, and you're using pickle jars and stuff, and then you finally do get a real piece of lab equipment, all of a sudden you appreciate it. You go, look how smooth that glass is. And it's got a specific shape for a specific purpose. And look at this thing. Somebody figured this out. How am I going to set this thing down? I can't. Oh, but somebody designed this thing so that'll fit right in. I go, oh my gosh. You can actually design things to do specific things. Did you know that? Isn't that amazing? Who thought of that? And then you start looking at the world strangely. You go, somebody had to figure out how to get the ink inside this thing inside this pen. How do you get the ink in there? I don't know. You just start, that's the way you start looking at the world. That's pretty cool. That little ball there in the end, how'd they get that little ball in there? What keeps it from coming out? I don't get it. that that's my goal with Faraday 200.
Well, you know, Jake, I think that that's a wonderful way to end this show with an inspirational current event in the life of Wizard 4.
That's
So I
right.
think that kind of wraps it up for show 5. Thanks again, Jake, for sharing your life with us. I'm really looking forward to our next episode when you will be showing and demonstrating some of the many artifacts you've
Oh
gathered
yeah.
from the
Oh
other
yeah.
wizards who came before you. Until then, on behalf of Faraday Foundation and Faraday Studios, I'm Bob Starr. Thanks for watching. See you next time, Jake.